the renowned Paul Robeson's live recording of episode 1, part 2 of The Sound of Becoming. We are so excited that you all were able to join us. As you can see, we are live on this evening, coming to you from the African American Cultural Center, Paul Robeson Theater, and we are so excited that you were able to join us again for yet another installation. Now, on tonight, as promised, we have none other than Buffalo's own community activist, educator, poet, author, drummer, storyteller, and so many other things all at the same time. We are talking about the one and only Lady Karima Amin, the Queen, Buffalo royalty. And we're so excited that she has agreed to join us on this evening to take part in this project. So we want you to sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, whatever you need, get all the kids to come together, and we are going to enjoy this production, this performance, this storytelling on this evening. And please make sure you click the donation button, which can be found on the African American Cultural Center Facebook page or Instagram page, all of our social media pages. Support the arts. Thank you so very much for joining us, and we want you to enjoy this experience on tonight. So we are getting ready to enter the theater where Queen Karima Amin is performing, and she is ready for you.
Who will I be today is the question. Makeup is a mask. If you could be anyone, if you could be anything, who would you be? The sound of becoming.
To share with you the sound and the sounds of my becoming who I am today. I'm especially excited about having the opportunity to do it because on this evening, I can tell my story, my own story. After 30 plus years of telling so many other kinds of stories, I can share my story. Some of you may know bits and pieces of it, and some of you might not know that much about me and my storytelling or the other things that I've been doing for a long time. I think I am the oldest person a part of this project, and so I got a lot of story to share and a lot of me to give, but it's something truly that I welcome the opportunity to do. Let's start at the beginning. As the oldest person, I don't mind telling you how old I am. June 1st, 1947. Hello, I'm here. It's Sunday, it's 7 a.m., and I'm making my entrance into the world. Here I am on the planet, the firstborn child of Harvey Eugene Aiken and Bessie Aiken, and they named me Carol Ann. I wasn't Karima then, but I was Carol Ann Aiken, and life was good. My mother's there, my father's there, I'm having fun, I'm growing up, and now I'm 2, and my mother had another baby. Here comes Elizabeth. But that was okay. She was my first playmate, and she was cute, and she was fun, sort of. I love my mom, still love her after all these years. I loved her then, I love her now, though she's been gone since 1992, but she had this particular habit of acting like Elizabeth and Carol Ann were twins. We were not twins. We were a year apart, and I was a year bigger. I was a year smarter. And of course, I thought I was a year cuter. But she insisted upon acting as if we were the same. We dressed alike, perfect dresses, just alike. Maybe I had blue and she wore pink. We had the socks and shoes just alike, and maybe my shoes were white and hers might have been brown, but they were same style. She even styled our hair the same. So much so that when I was 3 years old and I had a birthday party, I was really, really excited, not only because it was my birthday party, but because I didn't have the same hairstyle as little Lizzie. I didn't have a dress exactly like little Lizzie. Even at 3, I knew that I wanted to be something different. I wanted to have something different, and I wanted the differences all the way from the rooter to the tutor. Give it to me differently. And it hasn't changed. I still like things that are different. I like things that are unusual. I like meeting people who are different and meeting people who are unusual. It has helped me to grow and to become who I am. The early sound or sounds of my becoming, of course, came from my mother and my father, who insisted that I was smart. They said that all the time, that I was really smart. And I believed that I was smart. Even as a little one, between the ages of 1 to 5, I believed that I was smart. In fact, I started school when I was 4, but I had a library card when I was 3. Some of you remember the old Willard Park Projects library, and that's where we went every Friday. I had my own library card. I could write my name when I was 3, and I read books, lots of books. I even remember the first book I ever took out of the library, and that was a book called Blueberries for Sale. Loved that book so much, loved that story so much. I must have taken that book out of the library 5 or 6 weeks in a row. But then, of course, I progressed and started reading all kinds of other books. Starting school when I was 4 and hearing all the time that I was smart made me bigger and better than I probably was, but I liked hearing that. I liked being the teacher's pet. People don't like the teacher's pet, but I liked being the teacher's pet. There were lots of things that you could get that were extra if you were the teacher's pet. So being the pet was okay with me, in a place that I loved. I loved being in school. I loved it. I loved hearing that I was smart. I loved my teachers who seemed to love me, and it was all good. Then I progressed, and we moved from Howard Street to Cold Springs in 1954. My mom and dad bought a house, and I had more than Lizzie as my playmate. There were lots of children on the block, and they became my friends and playmates too. Some of them were white. I had seen lots of white people on television, but something was different and something changed. Yeah, the sound of the street was nothing like the sound of the street where we lived on the corner of Howard and Adams. Now there were white children on the block that seemed to be okay, and they were fun, and I made friends with one in particular who at that time I wanted to be just like. Little white girl named Tilly. I thought she was so beautiful with her blonde hair and her blue eyes. And she was kind of smart, like me, but I knew that I was smarter. And then I heard that Tilly's family was going to move. I didn't want Tilly to go, so I gave her a special gift in hopes that she would stay on the block and we could continue to be friends. Well, I gave Tilly all my dolls. Yep, every single one. Must have had about 5 or 6 of them. Even had one black doll. I don't know where my mother found a black doll back in 1950, whatever it was, but she had found a black doll. And I gave all my dolls to Tilly in hopes that she wouldn't leave the block. And when I told my mother what I had done, my mother said to me, "That child has parents that can buy her more dolls today than I could ever buy you in a lifetime. You better go get your dolls. Of course, being an obedient child, I went to Tilly's home and explained what my mother had told me. She didn't quite get it, and I didn't quite get it either. How could her parents afford to get her so many dolls in a day that my parents could buy for me in a lifetime? I was still young, didn't quite get it, but I learned. Matter of fact, when I saw Tilly again, it was when I was in high school. But before I get to high school, let me tell you this. My younger sister, Elizabeth, was bullied by me. I know you don't want to hear that I was a bully, but I was. I know that doesn't sound very good for Miss Karima to be a bully, but I was. Like I said, I was bigger than Lizzie, smarter than Lizzie, and I thought I was cuter than Lizzie, and I often made her do my bidding. Go get that for me. No, pick that up for me. Even made her one time, okay, more than once, I made her, little Lizzie, poor thing, God bless her. She forgave me years later. I made her ride me around. I know it sounds weird, but back in the day, you rarely saw Black people on television. And when you did, it was maybe Buckwheat. Remember Buckwheat, part of Our Gang, if you're old as I am? Or you might even remember Amos and Andy. Those characters didn't appeal to me. I liked the little white girl named Darla, who was part of Our Gang. And as I got older, I noticed that more Black people were beginning to show up on television. The first very Black woman that I saw on TV was the very beautiful Eartha Kitt. Some of you are too young to know Eartha Kitt, but I remember Eartha Kitt. And some of you are old enough to know Eartha Kitt. She was beautiful. She wore beautiful costumes. And one time I saw Eartha Kitt riding on the back of an elephant. I wanted to be like Eartha Kitt. I wanted to wear the spangly outfits and the beautiful headdresses, and I wanted to ride on an elephant. So I made Lizzie be my elephant. I know, sounds awful, but I did. Yep, I made Lizzie get down on her hands and knees, and I got on her back, and I made her drag me around the living room. Yeah, because I was going to be Eartha Kitt. I was going to be beautiful and special. Well, time goes on. And like I stopped before, I was in high school now, and Tilly was there. My friend Tilly was there. And guess what? She acted like she didn't know me from a can of paint. My friend Tilly? That was strange. She had changed her last name, or her parents had changed their last name. So she wasn't the Tilly that I knew, and she was acting like she really didn't know me. And for 4 years, all during high school, she acted like she didn't know me. She was smart. I was still smart too. English Honor Society, she was in it, and so was I. French Honor Society, she was in it, so was I. Junior Council on World Affairs, she was part of it, so was I. Yearbook staff, newspaper staff, she was a part of those activities, and so was I. I was real smart, and she was still smart, and, well, 4 years went by without her ever acting like she knew me. But on graduation day, believe it or not, she apologized to me. I just looked at her dumbfounded. I didn't need her then, and in fact, I had never needed her. High school was beautiful. High school was wonderful. I even hated to leave it, but I didn't really need Tilly to make my high school years wonderful. High school was wonderful, but the sound and the sounds of my becoming during those 4 years relied upon me continuing to do those things that made my parents proud. I liked hearing the sound of my father's voice or my mother's voice when no matter who they were talking to, they would somehow manage to wrangle the conversation around to our daughter, Carol Ann. She's really smart. Yep, she got this award and she got that award and she's doing really good in school. I liked hearing those things. It was all very wonderful. School was wonderful. My parents were wonderful. I was really blessed, more blessed than I knew. but I was truly blessed. All right. Leaving high school, I then went to the University of Buffalo. It was tough there. It was really hard. I found out that I wasn't as smart as I thought I was, but I worked hard. I partied too. You better believe that. I partied too. I laugh about that now with some friends who were around back in the day, and we remember partying from Thursday to Sunday. And we remember the sounds of our voices and our laughter as we realized, okay, we got a test on Monday. Okay, got a paper due Wednesday. Those were the sounds we heard during those years. But also during those years, I began to hear something different about me and who I was becoming. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Moving into the 60s and the 70s, that was my time. That was my true growing up time. And I heard the voices of poets, the words of poets whom I loved and still do. Nikki Giovanni was one. Don L. Lee was another, now known as Hakeem Majabuti. Sonia Sanchez was another. And Sonia Sanchez is still alive, still sharing her poetry and her stories. And I've met her quite recently as a member of the National Association of Black Storytellers. I was learning a lot about myself and who I was and who I wanted to be. You see this outfit I'm wearing this evening? It comes from Cameroon. I met a woman from Cameroon out at the University of Buffalo where I was invited to meet with some educators from the continent, from the motherland, teachers and principals and other support staff. And this was after a few years of my telling stories in the community and in other places around Western New York and outside of Western New York. I met these African people who told me so much about their homes, and I was already beginning to embrace myself as an individual, a woman of African descent. I like this outfit I'm wearing. It comes from Cameroon, and it came to me as a gift from a woman I met out at UB, the University of Buffalo, from Cameroon. She kept saying, "You look like my Aunt Margaret. You look like my Aunt Margaret." I remember her. And when she left Buffalo, going back to Cameroon, I heard from those who had planned the event for these African educators to come to Buffalo. She left a gift for me, and this is what she left. She left the blouse, which is the buba, the skirt, which is the lapa, and the scarf, which could be worn as a scarf, or can be worn as a shawl, or the way I have it, worn as a gele to cover my hair. Maybe we'll talk about my gray at another time. There's some sounds about that I can share, but not tonight. So, graduating from the University of Buffalo, where I got my BA in English, secondary education, and then later my master's in urban education curriculum development, I became a teacher, just like I always wanted. I'd known that I wanted to be a teacher. As already mentioned, I loved school. In fact, when I played school with my friends, if I couldn't be the teacher, I didn't want to play. I know that's wrong too. You don't want to hear it, but that was the truth. I couldn't be the teacher. I didn't want to play. So be it. Well, anyway, 1969, I became a teacher in the Buffalo Public Schools, and I loved it, loved it, loved it. Being a teacher was my dream. I had some wonderful teachers here in Buffalo. Not many of them were African American, but I remember every single African American teacher that did something to influence me, that talked to me, that encouraged me. Those were the sounds of me becoming me, the me I am today. I remember Ruby Nelson, first grade, beautiful Black woman. I remember Joyce Dorsey, fourth grade, more beautiful Black woman. I remember too, Ora Curry in high school, history teacher, who encouraged me to be a teacher. In fact, she encouraged me to join, with her words, the association, now I forgot the name of it, but it was when you want to become a teacher. There was an organization for young girls who one day would aspire to be a teacher. And one year I became secretary, and the next year I became president of the organization and was at Aura Curry's suggestion and encouragement. The sound of her voice still rings with me, telling me, you can do this. I had never been the president of anything or the secretary of anything, but I remember the sound of her voice. I could still hear her voice telling me, matter of fact, you know what she would do sometimes? She would let me teach her class, a segment of her class. And even allowing me to do that was an encouragement. It was kind of scary because it gave me butterflies in my stomach all the time, made me nervous, but her encouragement and her words made me who I am. So backing up, moving forward, love teaching. Teaching was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I taught in the Buffalo Public Schools from 1969 to 1992. I had wonderful students. I loved my students as much as I loved my own children later on. Being in the schools was wonderful. And I learned a lot, not only from my students, but from my children later on. I was teaching for quite a few years. And in 1974, I got married. But let's go back to the teaching part. Teaching was something I always wanted to do. And I felt good being acknowledged as a teacher who did some special things with students. I had a modeling club, started out with 8 little girls, ended up being with 75 boys and girls who could model, who could do a lineup for a show, who could even commentate if necessary. I made sure that I had some kind of a performing arts group in every school I worked at. I remember Black voices, and I remember the sound of my students' voices as they performed poetry by African American writers and African writers. Poetry done as a choral group. The way that you would sing in a choral group, that's how they recited poetry. They learned it and they did their parts and they were astounding performers, and I loved working with them. Besides commentating poetry in that business, we also had children who were involved in the Richmond Speaking Contest. That was a big deal. That was a big deal. I was happy to be a coach, and even more happy that many of my students were winners. In fact, all my students were winners, but those who won special awards always made me feel good and made me feel proud, and I always hoped that someday they would go on to do the same kind of thing that I was doing. But hearing their words to me now, when they say thank you, is like winning a $1,000 prize. I love hearing those words. That's the sound of my becoming and the sound of who I am and the sounds of more becoming. Because I haven't stopped. 73 is not the end of the road. I love to get the accolades. That's wonderful. I love to hear good things about myself. We all do. In fact, little babies do too. I mean, that's the beginning of self-awareness, but it's also the beginning of self-growth. The sound that makes you feel good, the sound that makes you feel special, the sound that encourages you to be even better than you are today, those are the sound and sounds of becoming. I got married in 94? Yeah, no, 74. I got married in 1974. I had 3 children, wonderful children, 2 girls and a boy whom I adopted. And life was pretty good when I got married. I was married for 12 years. And then I back up, let me tell the truth. The first 6 years were beautiful. The first 6 years were wonderful. The last 6 years were not so good. And I stayed too long enough to be injured. I ended up in a coma. I know it sounds not so good. And some people knew that it was coming, and some people never suspected because I never told people. I never told one friend. I never talked about it with my sisters. I never talked about what was going bad with my close friends. I just soldiered on, made the effort to do the best that I could do with my lot in life and my 3 children. I ended up in a coma. But obviously, I got out of the coma, and it was like what? My head, my thoughts, my ideas, those ideas that were swirling around me, like what was going to happen next? What's the sound of what's going to happen next in your life to you and your children were foremost and uppermost in my mind. I came out of that coma, and it's like my head was clear as a bell. I knew exactly what I had to do. Number one, get a divorce. And number two, keep on pushing, raise your children, and do the best you can do by yourself. I was happy to have good friends and two wonderful sisters. And my parents were still with me at that time, although mom died, like I said, in 1992. But I had my parents, had my sisters, had good friends, and that was wonderful. They encouraged me with their ideas and their thoughts and pats on the back and maybe brush a tear away, but I didn't cry too much. I just had to soldier on and do the best that I could do. And that's what I did. I hope my children would say I did the best that I could do. I learned, as I said earlier, from my students and from my children. I learned a lot as they spoke out and spoke up about their feelings and their ideas and their plans for the future. I learned about what they wanted to do for themselves. I learned about what they thought they could do for me. And I heard from them the sounds of what they wanted to do for this community, for our community, and for the world. Their words encouraged me to do better. Their words encouraged me to be better. Their words encouraged me to make life better, not only for myself and my close family, but for my extended family too. Life goes on, and I have been so encouraged by the sounds of voices from young folks and old folks. I always remember what my father always said: there are no bad days, only good days and better days. And when I'm having a bad day, I remind myself, and I hear my dad's voice, there are no bad days, only good days and better days. Or I hear my mother's voice, who always said, put God first and keep it moving. Put God first and keep it moving. So that's what I've tried to do. Put God first, keep it moving. And I've tried to share my dad's words and my mom's words with people in community who need to be inspired and encouraged. Along the way, my storytelling took me to the radio. WBLK invited me to be a special feature telling stories on the air. I had just resigned from the Buffalo School Board, and let me back up on that one too. People say, oh, you left because the children got to you. No, they didn't. My children were wonderful. My students were fantastic. But the New York State Education Department was not fantastic. And I felt that the New York State Education Department was asking things of teachers that had nothing to do with teaching children. It was all about collecting data. That got in the way of my creativity. So I left. My mother also said, if your work is not feeding your spirit, then leave it and try something new. Put God first and keep it moving. So that's what I did. More storytelling opportunities came to me because when I started sharing stories on the radio, men, women, and teenagers who were in jail and prison or some other form of confinement heard the stories. And next thing I knew, I was getting invitations to go into prisons and share stories. They don't invite me so much anymore. Number one, it's because of the pandemic. But even before the pandemic, it was my voice and my words and my activism that made the prison system saying, well, we don't want her here. We don't want her words. And I heard the sound of the prison doors closing, and so I wasn't allowed in anymore. But that was okay. I'd already done what I intended to do, and that was to share and encourage, and that was a good thing. As it turns out, I met a gentleman in a prison who was very smart, and he joined me in understanding or encouraged me to understand better how the criminal justice system worked, or better yet, how it doesn't work. And with more information and time passing, he and I got together and created Prisoners Are People Too, a nonprofit here in the city of Buffalo that's helped a lot of people come home. And that's something that we share. And I'm proud of Prisoners Are People Too. In fact, we have a 15-year history, and that's beautiful. So much beauty, in fact, that this gentleman, George Baba Ing, and I got married not too long ago, October 16th, 2020. So we combined forces, not only in the work that we do, but in the love that we share, not only for each other, but for our community. And being with him has been a blessing, with the work and with the love going on. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But what I really want to say as this concludes is that I am so proud and so happy that Brother Yao Khalil invited me to be a part of the Sound of Becoming. I know sometimes I can ramble a little bit, and maybe I've gone over my time. I don't have a clue. I laid my watch right here in front of me, but I haven't looked at it, so I don't know how long I've been talking, but I hope I was able to share a little something about myself and about the sound and the sounds that have impacted me throughout my life. So see you on the other side. Hope to see you soon. And remember, there are no bad days, only good days and better days. When rough things come, put God first and keep it moving. I want to thank Khalil for inviting me to be a part of this production. Thank you, Khalil. Love you.
Thank you all so very much for joining us live at the African American Cultural Center Paul Robeson Theater for episode 1, part 2 of The Sound of Becoming. We were here live tonight with the one and the only queen, the royalty of Buffalo, New York, Karima Amin. And we're so grateful for her sharing her sound of becoming with us. So stay tuned. If you missed any part of tonight's performance, we will be showing it again tomorrow, all day until midnight. You can find it on the African American Cultural Center's YouTube page. All right, and don't forget that you can find our donation link on any one of our social media pages, Facebook and Instagram. Support the art.